Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Got a Case of Wanderlust podcast. I'm your host, Lydia, and today I'm with solo female traveler Taylor Alissa, who is here to share all of her travel adventures and insights, including her time living abroad for 1 year, exploring Japan, Thailand, and South Korea. So, yeah, I'm so happy Taylor has joined me today. So, welcome to the podcast, Taylor.
Thank you so much for having me, Lydia. I'm so excited to really get into this.
Me too. So, I always ask my guests what sparked your wanderlust.
Oh my gosh. Let's see. So when I was younger, when I was little, not that much younger, but my family and I we would go on family vacations with family friends, like in the States, so like along the East Coast. So like every summer for a few years, like we would go to a new place. So that's how it kind of started. And then I went to a private Christian school and we went on a missions trip when I was in eighth grade. I'm like, oh, this is so cool. Like, people who do this for a living. And then COVID hit like years later, and I came across a new travel show on Netflix, um, the world's most amazing vacation rentals. And watching all the hosts go to different places really gave me the travel bug. Like I really got bit pretty hard. So like during the pandemic, ironically, I'm like, I want to go places, but obviously we couldn't go anywhere. But yeah, I think travel has always been part of me, part of my family. My family, they're from Jamaica, so like I'm a first gen American. So yeah, they moved here from Jamaica. Um, they started in I think it was New York, and then made their way down to Florida. So like travel is definitely in my blood. So
Hmm. Yes, I could totally relate to being antsy during the pandemic, just seeing all these wonderful places on earth and just wanting to be there, but like you can't. So I definitely feel like we all got pent up energy to just explore once quarantine ended. So what exactly was your first solo travel experience and what insights did you maybe gain from that trip?
let's see. So my first solo, I wouldn't really call it solo. I mean, I call it solo because I didn't go with my parents, but it was that school trip I took to the Bahamas on a missions trip. So I wasn't. It was solo, but not really.
Mm,
I went with my classmates, so that was like my first time, I guess, being on my own, like aside from being with family, and kind of navigating a different space. It reminded me a lot of like Jamaica, so I've been there enough to feel comfortable in like the Caribbean culture. It felt like part of home, honestly. So I guess learning how to be culturally open, if that's a if that's even a concept. I guess being open minded. That's a better way to say it. To culture and how we live. Everyone in the world lives so differently, but we're all human. And I think that's what unites us at the end of the day. But how we express our humanity and humanness is so interesting. So
mm,
yeah, that's something that
mm-hmm.
I take with me anywhere I go. Even if it's like another state, I'm like, even though we're in America, like people live differently, even different cities. Like, I think I've become so aware of that for sure.
Yes, I think that's a perfect testament to the power of studying abroad, which we unfortunately so desperately lack in the United States for a variety of factors, including like our geographical proximity to other places. It's a bit harder, but I'm so glad that you got to have that experience, and I wish more Americans would have that opportunity because, as you said, like it really just changed your perspective about life, about different cultures. So was that kind of your motive to decide to move abroad to Asia?
Actually, that is a funny story. So 2022, it was just the new year. The new year had just started, and I was hanging out with friends. We went to go get some food, ironically Asian food, and we were talking about how we wanted to go to another country. I think it was Slovenia because I had a friend who lived there as part of her college, like kind of study abroad in a way. Like she was living, working abroad, and all that is part of her college experience in Slovenia for. just over a year. So she was telling us about it. She just gotten back and everything, and she was saying how she wanted to go in like in the spring break time. So like in a few months, I'm like, I'm so down to do it. Let's plan it. So the day after, I get a text from a very close family friend. I pretty much call her my cousin. That like literally that's how close our families are. She texted me. I remember it's January 3rd. I wake up to a text asking me like, "Hey, we're stationed over here in the military now. We'd love for you to come out and like kind of help us with the kids and like kind of be like a source of stability and a slice of home while they're over there." And I agreed. I was like, "This is such a unique opportunity. I've always wanted to go to Japan." So I jumped on it. I was like, "Sure, I'll go." So yeah, and my parents are all they've been super encouraging about me like going out into the world and seeing um as much as I can and experience what I can because they didn't necessarily have the same opportunity. So being able to go further than they have gone is really what inspired me the most.
Wow. Well, first of all, like kudos to you for just like going after something so wild as going to Japan spur of the moment like that. I think taking a step like that often requires courage, but it sounds like for you, you just kind of knew that it was your place. So, like, how was your experience there? Like, please tell me all about like getting there and maybe what you felt when you first, yeah, got to Japan.
Okay, so that was my first time flying alone. So it was already like I like to go into unfamiliar situations. Like, yes, it's a little daunting, but to be like, okay, it's about to happen. Like, I can't turn back now. I'm literally in the airport going through security. I can't run back. So just getting on the plane and like taking everything as it came, with an open mind. Landing in Japan, the airport was a bit different than the airport back home, so that already kind of threw me off. I'm like, what? But I landed at night, so I didn't really um, see much. But it felt so different just knowing that I crossed the world, halfway around the world, to be in another place. Um, but being there, even the people like in the airport were so nice, even though we didn't speak the same language. And English was written on signs and everything, so it was pretty easy to navigate. But just even if I did get lost or overwhelmed, being able to ask for help, they were just so ready and willing to help that I put pretty much all my anxieties at ease. But yeah, that initial part of landing in Japan was like, oh my gosh, I'm here. So yeah, that was really a fun experience.
Yeah, I mean, it's a completely different culture. If you're talking coming from the United States, I almost can imagine it's opposite in many aspects. So besides the airport, did you experience any other cultural shocks when living in Japan?
Let's see. I don't know if I would call it culture shock. Let's see. I guess the most like this is so hard because where I was in Japan, um, like I lived on a base for a little while, so it was very much American military culture, but right off base was very Japanese. But also you had the fusion of different cultures where I was. I was in Yokosuka, so that's south of Tokyo, like an hour and a half train ride. But I guess the most shocking thing was the language barrier, if I'm honest, because I'm pretty much an introverted person, and the Japanese culture like kind of reminded me of being introverted. So I wasn't too shocked in that aspect, but just the culture barrier. It's not like Spanish where like here in Florida, if someone starts speaking Spanish, I could kind of navigate because I know a little bit. But in Japan, that's like a whole different it was a very different language. Yeah, so that was the most shocking thing to me, for sure.
Did you learn any Japanese before you arrived?
Ironically, no, I did not know any Japanese before I went, just because the trip happened so quick. So when my family friend messaged me, in January, I was in Japan by April. It was a very quick time, so I didn't really get too much into Japanese. I did watch shows. I try to listen to music just to get familiar with like the cadence of the language and pick up on any like very very basic phrases. But for the most part, I didn't really learn anything about the language that much. But when I was there, I definitely did take language classes. And with my sensei, I miss her so much. She became like my Japanese mom. I always call her that. But yeah, that's where when I was in Japan, I finally was like, I gotta learn if I want to get around. So I did.
Mm.
Do I remember a whole lot of it? Not necessarily, but when I first came back home, I would respond in Japanese to family speaking to me. I'm like, wait a second, they don't understand what I'm saying. So it kind of became second nature to um, respond in like super basic phrases, though.
Mm. So I imagine the language barrier was definitely the biggest challenge. It is for me, at least living in Spain. So were you able to find friends, I guess, easily despite the language barrier? Or how was that like just navigating, not knowing perfect Japanese and yeah, just navigating daily life?
As for making friends, since I was on a base, I was surrounded by like younger people, military moms, like military culture. So making friends, like I really had to put myself out there. Like I volunteered. Um, if there were any events on base or like with the with Yokosuka and our military base, if there were any events where Japanese people were invited or American people could participate, I try to submerge myself in those things so that I could bridge the gap and meet people. As for building friendships, like people came and went pretty quick, so it was kind of hard to build friendships. Um, but I did meet a lot of amazing people. Some people I still keep in contact with here today. Um, like especially my sensei. Like oh my gosh, I miss her so much. But yeah, making friends like it was a challenge for sure because military culture, like American culture, is so different than um, Japanese culture. Like I feel like Americans are super social, like they want to do everything possible, whereas Japanese are kind of more reserved. They're like okay, like hi, but also it takes time to build friendships that way. But yeah, I didn't make a lot of Japanese friends if I'm honest, and I wish I did, but just because of my unique experience being in Japan, like that was probably what made it so different. Because it wasn't like a study abroad experience or anything like that. So, but I'm sure if I had put myself out there a little more, for sure I could have made Japanese friends.
Okay, and I guess my follow up question to that would be, did you ever feel like homesick during that year abroad? Like, were there aspects of American culture that you missed, or did you really enjoy the Japanese culture?
I think I didn't really get homesick. Like there were certain things where I would think, oh, my friends would love to do this, or my family would love this experience. So it wasn't necessarily like homesick because I feel like being with family friends who I was already close with kind of felt like home already. So, and I talked to my family literally every single day with the time difference. Like we would use WhatsApp to communicate or like send each other voice notes, videos. So there was enough ongoing communication where I didn't necessarily feel homesick. I think like I was so ready to explore, like I was just open to whatever came up, you know? Um, I guess towards the end, like near the my year at the end of my year there, I kind of felt like okay, like I kind of miss home, miss the familiarity and my friends and my family, but like initially, no, not really. If I'm honest, I think I was just so excited to be there. Everyone was so welcoming, and even like any challenge I faced, it wasn't like something to be terrified about. You know, it's kind of like I kind of mentally prepared myself like, yes, you're about to step into a new culture, experience new things, but new doesn't mean scary, you know. Being away from home, like home is a it's not necessarily a place, you know, it's the people and you bring those people, those memories with you wherever you go. So
Mm.
yeah. Oh no, I don't think I necessarily got homesick. If I did, it was for like 2 seconds, and then I was fine. Yeah.
Okay, well, that's really good to hear. Um, do you have any advice with for people interested in looking to move to Japan? Like, what advice would you give to someone who's interested in making that leap?
Absolutely. Don't pack too much when you go. I can't tell you how many things I bought over there. I went with like two giant suitcases and still didn't have space to bring back all the things that I got. Um, but other than that, I think moving to Japan, being open minded, being willing to step outside of your comfort zone. Um, because one thing that I noticed between American and Japanese cultures is that in America, like I was saying, we're super social. If we're going somewhere, a lot of places are catered to big groups like families, friends, more than one person. But abroad in Japan, you could go out and do things on your own. It wasn't weird to go eat at a restaurant on my own. I went on so many solo dates. I was like, let me just take some time to like ground myself. I could go anywhere and I would see a bunch of Japanese women doing the same thing, and it kind of felt like, ooh, girl power, you know. Um, but yeah, I think being open to trying new things and be open to the experiences that come to you, and don't see um, change as something scary and something to run away from. Just kind of embrace it and take your time and give yourself grace to adjust. Yeah, that was a lot of advice, but
No, that was
that's
wonderful.
that was it.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I I love that Japan. From what I've heard at least, it does tend to be more comfortable for solo travelers because it is um, less of a like social atmosphere. Like it's very normal to go and eat by yourself, which I think is really wonderful. I'm curious, your experiences traveling to other countries while you were in Japan, um, like to South Korea, for example, was it also very comfortable as a solo female traveler?
Oh yeah, it definitely was because I would stay in a hotel near the airport, like close enough so like if anything happened, I can just like hop on the train and go. But yeah, I didn't spend too much time in Thailand and South Korea, at least not as much as I wanted to. Um, but I felt very, very comfortable in South Korea. It kind of reminded me of Japan, if I'm honest. And I guess because they're kind of like super close to each other, like a 2 hour plane ride, it didn't really feel like I went too far. It just felt like going to another part of Japan, if I'm honest. But yeah, like the language, they're very different. But yeah, like I would eat alone in South Korea. It did feel a little bit awkward. Like I remember going to get Korean barbecue, and that's a lot of food for one person. The lady was like, "Are you sure?" I'm like, "Yeah." Like I'm here. But then I see a group of people, like a bigger group of people, come in and they're enjoying their barbecue, and I'm like, "This is kind of awkward." Whereas in Japan, like I'd go out for ramen, and 10 other people who don't know each other would be doing the same thing. So I guess that was one thing that was pretty different. In Thailand, I had a friend there, so I got to see her for a couple days, spending time with her. Very, very different from Japan and South Korea, if I'm honest. It's very busy, um, not as organized, I would say. It's just a very, very, very different atmosphere, but it was worth every single moment. Like, I went on a tour by myself, so I got to visit um, some of their religious and like cultural places on my own, but it wasn't anything like intimidating, if I'm honest. It was more so, wow, I'm here. Let me capitalize on every single moment I have, no matter like if I'm here for a day or like 10 days. So,
Wow, I love that you took full advantage of the whole experience. It sounds like you really maximized your time there, which is great. Would that be somewhere you would want to move again?
as for moving to Japan, I don't know how long I could live there again. Maybe like another year, like doing a different experience, like study abroad or like something different where I could stay there for that long. Um, yeah, I think I would. But there's definitely other places in the world I want to see and want to visit, at least to see if I could live there that long. But yeah, I guess like Japan for sure. I think I could live there again. Like yeah, I felt very comfortable. Like when I came back, like even to today, I'm like, oh, I miss it so much. But yeah, I think yeah, I highly recommend Japan for solo travelers. At least start with like a week or two just to get into it. Or if you want to jump in, like definitely like study abroad. Um, if they have any au pair, like live-in nanny type opportunities, that's another way to be pretty submersed into the culture. But yeah, I think I would.
Okay. And then lastly, my last question to you about Japan would be like, because Japan is a pretty homogenous culture, pretty much the whole country is ethnically Japan minus the expats that moved there from different countries. Did your identity as like a Jamaican American affect your experience at all there?
Oh, it did. Ironically, like I don't know how it even happened, but Japan loves like reggae,
Hmm.
which is huge in Jamaica. So that was pretty interesting to see how much they um take on, not take on, but how much they love that culture. Jamaican culture, Caribbean culture. They even had like a carnival in Tokyo. I went I think one weekend we went on like a Saturday to Tokyo to just check it out. My one wasn't as big as like here in South Florida or anything like that, but just seeing even like how much they like Brazilian culture. Because in Japan, I think there is some areas like there are Brazilians who live there, or like Brazilian Japanese descent. So that was really interesting to come across. Um, what else? Obviously, like being a black woman, like, like you said, it's very ethnically homogenous there. So already being like 10 shades darker like makes you stand out. But I think especially where I was, I didn't really get a lot of stares or like confusion, just because American culture was so ingrained in the Japanese culture there and vice versa. So they're used to seeing like people, like African Americans, Black people, and I did meet um, someone there. He owns a business that is impact in Japan, like alone as a Black American was just astounding. So I learned a lot of history from him as well, and I'm still learning. Um, was just seeing how I don't know if accepting is the right word, because there are still places in Japan where they don't let anyone in if you're not Japanese, if you don't know the language, if you're American, they're not going to let you in. Like it doesn't matter if you're black, white, like whatever. So there were some moments like that where I couldn't go into places just because of that. Um, but even in the U.S., like even seeing that is kind of like wow, like wherever you go, that difference that I feel is always going to be there. But it's just um, what do you do with that feeling different? Like, do you let it dim your light, or do you just keep shining bright? You know. So, but yeah, I think like where I was aware of my difference, but not to the point where I couldn't be myself. Yeah.
I love that. Like not letting other people dim your light. That is such a powerful idea and something I think is really, really important to keep in mind when moving abroad because ultimately at the end of the day you will be an outsider no matter how hard you try to integrate. Integration takes many, many years and you can expect to experience that when you first move abroad. But I'm really glad that your experience in Japan was not isolating in that aspect. And then just to wrap up, some rapid fire questions. The first
Ooh.
one, the first one is, what is a special place in your heart?
Oh my gosh, in Japan? Okay. Hakuba. I got to see snow for the first time and I went skiing for the first time. So yeah,
Ooh,
definitely a favorite place of mine.
okay, I haven't heard of that city. And number two would be, what would be a memorable meal you've ate in Japan?
Oh my gosh, I think it was I don't remember what it's called, but it had fish broth in it. That was pretty memorable because I wasn't used to anything like that in my life. Like learning how to you leave a little bit of the broth in your bowl to pour it onto another dish. So it's like, well, I've never done that. Like when I eat, I'm just eating everything all at once. But just learning how to appreciate the culture and learn it in that way and experience in that way made me appreciate it a little more.
Okay, fish broth. Noted to try that in Japan. And lastly, what is somewhere you are looking forward to going to next?
Oh my goodness. So I'm going on a cruise in the summer to Italy and Greece. I'm super excited about that. About to get my European summer on for a week. So I'm really excited to go there. I know I'm not near Spain, unfortunately, but if I see Spain from the port, I would definitely wave.
Well, that sounds incredible. Well, thank you so much for your time here, Taylor. It was really fun chatting with you, and thank you for sharing all your insight today.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Lydia. I can't wait to come back another day.
Thank you so much for listening to the Gotta Case One of Us podcast. Again, my name is Lydia, and you can find me on social media in the About section of this podcast. Please rate and review if you found value or insight from this, and I hope to see you in the next episode.